Prologue. Two cloaked figures meet in a dark alley at night, their motives shrouded in secrecy. The first man leans against a wall, torn between a persistent inner voice urging him to act and a gentler one urging him to flee. Moonlight casts eerie shadows around them, heightening his unease. A second cloaked figure approaches, questioning the first and emphasizing the importance of making the act convincing. He hands over a coin purse as payment, ensuring the first man's compliance. The first man hesitates but accepts the purse, acknowledging he cannot promise success. The second figure stresses the need for authenticity, and the first man pledges to carry out the plan despite the turmoil in his mind. As the second figure disappears into the shadows, he cryptically explains that every brutal act is born of love, leaving the first man with a profound, unsettling understanding that binds them in their dark purpose. In Chapter 1, Peyton Gray stands in the throne room, trembling as a drop of blood or honey stains the marble beneath her. She is restrained, hands cuffed, scarred, and bruised, haunted by her past and the weight of the crimes she has committed, including killing Edric Azer. The king, Kit, calls her forward, declaring her to be his bride. Despite her fear and defiance, she meets his green gaze, recognizing him as both the son of the man she killed and a ruler seeking to stabilize Ilya. Kit uncuffs her, taking her hand as a gesture of authority and reassurance, and explains the dire state of the kingdom, dwindling resources, hostile neighboring lands, and the consequences of decades of elite isolation. Their union is framed as a political move to reintegrate ordinaries, restore trade, and save Ilya. Peyton consents, letting him place the ring on her finger, becoming a symbol of hope and sacrifice for a united kingdom. In Chapter 2, Kai witnesses Pedin being publicly marked with a binding ring by his brother Kit, signaling her engagement and cementing her role as the future queen. He struggles with his intense feelings for her while hiding in the crowd, his anger and wielder abilities threatening to surface. When a court member insults Pedin, Kai intervenes to protect her, prompting her to assert her own authority and warn the man against future disrespect, establishing her first decree as future queen. Together, they escape to a small broom closet to avoid the court, where Kai tries to calm her and help her process the shock of her new position and the truths about her parentage. Pedin wrestles with her identity as an ordinary, the pressure of uniting the kingdom, and the reality of being betrothed to Kit. Kai pledges to protect her and teases her, trying to maintain a semblance of closeness despite her engagement. In Chapter 3, Pedin follows Ellie through the castle, still reeling from the mortifying moment she witnessed with Kit. She struggles with feelings of powerlessness, loss, and grief over Adina and her father, while also contemplating the dangerous ring binding her. Ellie leads her to the Queen's new chambers, a lavish space filled with sunlight, fine furniture, and a balcony overlooking the gardens, which overwhelms Pedin and triggers memories of her past struggles and fort in the slums. She reflects on her complex relationship with Kit, friend, foe, and future king, and considers their shared potential to save the kingdom. Ellie, devoted as ever, begins tending to Pedin, cleaning the blood and grime from her body and noticing her hair, which she keeps as a connection to Adena. They discuss the current state of the kingdom, Kit's isolation, the resistance members held in the dungeons, and Pedin insists on speaking with Kit and Callum immediately, determined to uncover the truths of her survival and the kingdom's future. In Chapter 4, Pedin cleans herself thoroughly after enduring injuries, emerging raw and blistered. Ellie reluctantly informs her of something troubling, prompting Pedin to storm down the hallway toward a door where Lenny waits. Their confrontation is intense. Pedin blames Lenny for perceived failures, threatening violence over Adina's death at the hands of Blair during the final trial. Lenny explains he cannot let her see Blair due to orders from the king and tries to calm her, reminding her of restraint and her new responsibilities as the king's betrothed. Pedin admits her fear and anger, confessing that her desire for vengeance has fueled her. Lenny reassures her, revealing he returned to Ilya to support her because others, including his mother, Finn, and Lena, ensured he could safely operate within the castle. They share a moment of relief and humor, with Pedin acknowledging her survival, and Lenny affectionately dubbing her a cockroach, highlighting her resilience. In Chapter 5, Kai confronts Kit in his study about his plans regarding Pedin. Kit returns Kai's enforcer ring and reflects on the burden of their family crest and the kingdom's violent history. Kai questions Kit's plan to marry Pedin, fearing it contradicts their father's wishes. Kit explains that Pedin killed their father, and marriage transforms her into a symbol of peace necessary to save Ilya. Pedin overhears their conversation. Kit confirms the elite's lies and healers' corruption through Adam Gray's journal and letters from their father. After learning about the resistance, slum conditions, and dwindling resources, Kit decides the marriage is essential to save the kingdom, not to obey his father. He resolves to protect the Azer legacy and Pedin while presenting a palatable version of events to the kingdom. Pedin agrees to marry Kit to achieve a free, united Ilya, acknowledging she may one day change his perspective on ordinaries. In Chapter 6, Pedin prepares for court with Ellie's help, concealing her scars and the O branded above her heart. She chooses a deep blue dress Adina would have liked and allows Ellie to adjust the tie and apply makeup, hiding bruises and emphasizing her eyes. Pedin steels herself, reflecting on her past and the tension with Kai, who shares a quiet, meaningful glance before court proceedings begin. At the throne room, the court rises as King Kit enters. Kit addresses long-standing lies. Healers claimed ordinaries carried a hidden disease weakening elites, a story used by his father, King Edric, to justify their banishment. Kit announces the ordinaries' return, prompting chaos and resistance from the court. When accusations target Pedin as her father's killer, Kit defends her, asserting she acted in self-defense. He outlines plans for engagement announcements, welcoming ordinaries and citywide proclamations. Pedin walks from the court alongside Kit, concealing complex emotions behind a composed exterior, while Kai observes silently, their bond strained but present. In Chapter 7, Pedin sleeps beside Adina, feeling a fleeting sense of peace until she awakens to a horrifying vision. Adina appears lifeless, her skin cold and death-like, and a branch repeatedly pierces her chest. Pedin screams and struggles to save her, but the scene ends in terror, only for her to realize it was a nightmare. Kai, hearing her cries, has broken into her room and finds her panicked, holding a knife. He reassures her, explaining he couldn't ignore her screams, and their moment of fear shifts into intimacy. Pedin and Kai steal away beneath a willow tree, sharing whispered words, gentle touches, and stolen kisses while reflecting on past memories and unspoken desires. Amid the shadow of Ava's burial site beneath the tree, they reconcile the tension of forbidden love and duty, agreeing to cherish the fleeting moments together. Their bond strengthens as they playfully engage in a thumb war rematch beneath the moonlit branches. In Chapter 8, Kai rides in an open coach with Kit and Pedin during a parade, observing their interactions and the tension between them. The conversation drifts into childhood memories, revealing Kit's teasing of Kai and Pedin's laughter, highlighting past camaraderie and mischief. Subtle undercurrents of jealousy and unspoken affection surface as Kai notices Kit's lingering feelings for Pedin and his own for her, complicating their brotherly bond. As the procession moves through the upper-class city, the crowd reacts with disdain toward Pedin, now the queen, though she maintains composure. Kit reassures her, emphasizing that acceptance will take time. Pedin expresses her concern for the ordinaries in the slums, revealing her purpose to bridge the gap between elites and commoners. Kit acknowledges her motives, and despite the parade's ceremonial route through the upper city, he agrees to redirect the coaches to the slums. Kai observes the dynamics silently, processing the layered loyalties, regrets, and the weight of their shared history. In Chapter 9, Pedin returns to Loot Alley, witnessing the bustling market and reflecting on her past survival and thefts, as well as scars from imperial punishments. Riding with Kai and Kit, she notices the bloody whipping post, which triggers painful memories. Explosions suddenly throw her to the floor. Kai shields her as bombs ignite chaos, fires, and panicked horses. Despite warnings, Pedin leaps from the coach to help, seeing collapsing buildings, burning carts, and injured civilians. She kneels beside a critically wounded boy, attempting to stop his bleeding, but he dies in her arms, echoing her trauma with Adina. Kai pulls her away as Loot Alley lies in ruins, leaving Pedin grappling with the devastation of her home, her people, and her grief. Meanwhile, Edric moves swiftly through his castle, reflecting on his father's harsh teachings that molded him into a king. He visits his secluded queen, Iris, who is heavily pregnant. Despite her isolation for safety, she urges visibility to the kingdom. Labor pains begin, and Edric attends her, preparing for the imminent birth, aware that this marks a pivotal moment in his life and reign. In Chapter 10, Peyton recovers beside a fire after a traumatic event, bloodied and exhausted. Callum finds her, comforting and holding her, revealing that Kit discovered the truth while he assisted. Peyton expresses gratitude, noticing Kit and Kai talking nearby. Callum had carried her to safety, started the fire, and departed for enforcer duties. Peyton observes his concern, acknowledging her attraction, but resisting it. She questions Kai about the recent explosions, learning that 6 man-made bombs caused 9 deaths and dozens of injuries. Callum theorizes the attack targeted the parade's symbolic meaning, not the royals themselves. Kit and Peyton recognize that many oppose her as an ordinary queen. Easel confirms public unrest, stating the kingdom struggles to accept ordinaries and slum residents. Kai adds that elites increasingly oppose the slums. The perpetrators are likely elites imitating resistance tactics. Easel declares that Pedin must prove herself through the trials to gain acceptance as queen. In Chapter 11, Kai struggles with fear as he watches Pedin decide to enter a new set of trials despite the danger. She insists it is the only way to prove herself to the kingdom, acknowledging the risk of death. Kai wears an enforcer's ring, waiting atop the dais for the court as the king arrives, escorting Pedin, dressed as a bride-to-be. The king addresses the court, condemning the recent attack in the slums and acknowledging the difficulty of accepting Pedin as an ordinary queen. He announces that Peyton will undergo trials to demonstrate her bravery, benevolence, and brutality, allowing the court to judge her worthiness. Posters will inform the city, and the first trial will occur in 3 days. Peyton addresses the court, asserting she acts for the hope of a better kingdom where ordinaries and elites coexist. She vows to survive the trials and defy those who wish her harm before leaving the throne room arm in arm with the king. In Chapter 12, Pedin struggles with fear and grief over Adina's death as she faces the prospect of another set of deadly trials, this time alone. Haunted by her past near-death experiences in the purging trials, she struggles to sleep and eventually leaves her room impulsively, heading to the training yard at night. There, she observes Kit and his brother Kai sparring. Kit reassures Kai that their bond can survive beyond past conflicts and that he intends to train ordinaries to defend the kingdom after the parade bombing, surprising both Kai and Pedin. Hidden, Pedin watches the interaction, reassured by Kit's intentions. Later, she confronts Kai, who senses her presence. They share a private, intimate moment despite the danger of being seen, acknowledging their mutual care and restraint. Pedin resolves to focus on her trials while maintaining secrecy with Kai, who supports her choice. The chapter ends with Kai carrying Pedin to the willow tree for a safe, private refuge. In Chapter 13, Peyton prepares nervously for dinner with King Kit, guided by Andy, who repairs the door and reminds her that surviving the trials will make her queen of Ilia. She leaves, warned not to hurt Kit, and is escorted by a masked Imperial to the throne room. Entering voluntarily, Peyton confronts the dynamics of choice and power. She finds Kit fatigued from meetings but composed, observing the formal distance of royal meals. Pedin bridges this gap, sitting beside him and initiating a tentative reconciliation. They discuss past betrayals, trust, and the lingering tension with Kai. Peyton asserts her desire to repair their relationship, and Kit cautiously agrees to give her a chance. Conversation shifts to the upcoming trials, revealing that her next challenges will be at the Scorches and the Shallows. The chapter ends with a fragile camaraderie restored, mutual understanding of fears, and a small moment of levity over mashed potatoes, symbolizing hope, trust, and the careful rebuilding of personal and political bonds. In Chapter 14, Kai trains his soldiers relentlessly, moving among the elites and ordinaries, correcting their stance, grip, and awareness. He separates the timid ordinaries from the skilled elites until they demonstrate proper swordsmanship. Exhausted as night falls, he returns to the castle and seeks Pedin, finding her in her repaired quarters. Despite her protests about his presence and their secret, they share a passionate, restrained kiss. Kai removes her engagement ring, replacing it with a simple band, signaling their complicated relationship. They discuss Kit's suspicions and her dinner meetings with him, acknowledging the need for caution. Pedin prepares for upcoming trials in unfamiliar locations, reflecting on bravery and farewells. Kai gifts her the silver dagger belonging to her father, restoring her as the silver savior and reminding her of his protection. She reassures him he is not her father or the monster he feared becoming, strengthening their bond and leaving them united in trust, love, and mutual protection. In Chapter 15, Pedin prepares to face the first of the trials that will determine her worthiness as queen. Escorted through the crowded streets by the king and his entourage, she endures the scrutiny and hostility of onlookers while steeling herself for the challenges ahead. Kit announces to the city that her trial will test her bravery. She must retrieve the crown of the first queen of Ilia from the crypt in the Sanctuary of Souls, a place long feared by bandits and rumored to be dangerous. The trial requires her to cross the Scorches Desert, confront physical threats, and resist the fears her own mind may conjure. With Kit's encouragement and Kai's fleeting support, Pedin steps into the desert, recalling the past hardships she survived there. She feels the weight of her body, the intensity of the heat, and the emotional burden of potential loss, yet resolves to move forward, driven by necessity, hope, and the challenge of proving herself. In Chapter 16, Pedin navigates the harsh desert toward the Sanctuary of Souls, tasked with finding the first queen's crown before time runs out. She reflects on her past and the man who raised her, acknowledging he is not her biological father, but her true parent. Entering the caves, she repeatedly searches in darkness, groping along walls and floors, encountering obstacles and experiencing fear and pain. In one cave, she discovers scattered remnants of her past self, silver strands of hair, symbolizing moments of trauma she endured. Continuing her search, she crawls through a narrow, dirt-filled cave, startled by hundreds of attacking bats, sustaining multiple cuts. Retreating, she accidentally falls through a decayed trapdoor into a large wooden coffin. Realizing it holds the first queen, Marina of Dor, she pries it open with her dagger. Among the decayed remains, Pedin locates the queen's crown and claims it, aware of death's ominous presence. In Chapter 17, Kai struggles with his duty as the enforcer of Ilia while consumed by thoughts of Pedin, who is undergoing her first trial in the desert. He feels powerless, haunted by Kit's warning that failure could mean Pedin's death rather than marriage. After pacing his bedroom, Kai explores forbidden spaces in the castle, first visiting Kit in a long-locked room where they reflect on their past, their father, and Kit's legacy, sharing a rare moment of brotherly closeness. Later, Kai climbs the west tower to the infirmary to see his ailing mother, Queen Mila. She reflects on past losses, her daughter Ava and Kai's father, and acknowledges Kai's bond with Pedin, noting the complications following Pedin's role in his father's death. She warns Kai not to let Pedin become his weakness and stresses the importance of protecting Kit. Kai leaves the infirmary, acknowledging Pedin has been his weakness from the beginning. In Chapter 18, Pedin struggles to climb out of a collapsing crypt with a bloody body and a heavy crown. Injured and dizzy, she navigates through darkness, fearing she has awakened something forbidden. Upon reaching the cave's mouth, she encounters 3 bandits who demand the crown. Despite her exhaustion and injuries from bats, she fights them fiercely, using a dagger and the crown itself as a weapon. She kills 2 bandits with brutal efficiency and narrowly survives the third after a vicious struggle, displaying a primal, almost inhuman survival instinct. Adina's light within her flickers, but gradually returns as she processes the violence she committed. Finally, Pedin escapes the cave, stumbling into the starry night, exhilarated and relieved to be alive. Bloodied, bruised, and trembling, she clutches the crown and looks toward the path ahead, determined to continue her journey toward the city, the castle, and her destiny as a queen tasked with uniting Ilia. In Chapter 19, Kai waits restlessly in the throne room for Pedin's arrival, surrounded by the drunken, gossiping court. His thoughts are consumed by worry for her, fearing something has happened. Jax attempts to distract him with wine and conversation, but Kai cannot shake his concern. When the doors finally open, Pedin enters, covered in blood and dirt, holding a crown in her scarlet-stained hands. Her torn clothing and visible wounds display the trials she endured. The court falls silent, recognizing her achievement. Kai observes her with a mix of awe, relief, and jealousy, acknowledging her strength and the commanding presence she brings despite her pain. She meets Kit's gaze, and he announces to the court that she has completed her first trial. Pedin places the bloodied crown on her head, strides toward the king, and accepts his arm. Kai's jealousy battles with his admiration as he leaves the throne room, confronted by Andy reminding him she belongs to Kit. In Chapter 20, Pedin, physically and emotionally battered from her trial, leans on Kit for support as she leaves the throne room. She retrieves the crown under the watchful eyes of the elites while hiding her feelings for Kai. Kit helps her remove the crown and notices her engagement ring, deepening her anxiety about Kai. The king orders Kit to announce a celebratory ball and instructs Padden to receive a healer. Alone with Kai, Padden is tended to, her wounds cleaned, and they share vulnerable confessions about fear, duty, and loyalty, solidifying their bond with a tender kiss. Meanwhile, King Edric faces devastating loss. His wife, Queen Iris, has been killed by an infant. In his grief, he holds their newborn daughter, who bears Iris's eyes. Overcome by the desire for power, Edric demands from his silencers the child's strength. Damien, a silencer, hesitates before revealing the truth. The infant is powerless. In Chapter 21, Padden endures healing from a healer, her body tingling as the wounds from her trial close, reminding her painfully of her late father. Kai leaves early, having insisted she see a healer, and Padden slowly recovers, preparing for the upcoming ball with Ellie's help. She adjusts her dress and the silver ring on the correct finger, honoring the trial's requirements and her late friend Adina's memory. Approaching the ballroom, she and Kit are observed by the court. Kit announces her success in retrieving Marina Azer's crown and surviving her first trial. During the ball, Padden navigates the crowd, asserting her presence beside Kit and requests to dance with him. She notices Adina's murderer, Blair, and instinctively charges at her in anger, but Kai restrains her. Lenny intervenes, warning Padden of the consequences of acting violently in front of the court. Padden regains composure, choosing to drink champagne and embrace a moment of simple enjoyment instead of anger. In Chapter 22, Kai watches Padden at the ballroom, noting she has taken off her shoes and moved freely, her silver dress clinging to her as she dances. He carries her shoes and monitors her drinking, concerned she might overindulge. Their flirtatious exchange highlights the tension between them, with Kai struggling against his attraction while acknowledging her engagement to his brother. Padden teases him, pressing him to drink and testing his self-control, but Kai maintains vigilance, aware of the delicate boundaries. Later, Padden calls Jax to dance, and Kai observes her laughter and carefree movements, recognizing her joy. Kai shares a quiet moment with his brother Kit, reflecting on past trauma and reaffirming their bond. They watch Padden and Jax dance, acknowledging her formidable personality and survival instincts. The chapter closes with Kai holding Padden's shoes, overwhelmed by his love for her and the impossibility of claiming her. In Chapter 23, Padden wakes with a pounding head after the previous night's ball, recalling little of the champagne-fueled chaos that led her to dance with Kit and Kai Azer, forging bonds with both brothers. Kit arrives to check on her, offering a foul-tasting but effective hangover remedy prepared by Gale and a comforting presence. Padden struggles with lingering embarrassment over the night's events, including her discarded shoes, while Kit reassures her and praises her for lifting the court's spirits despite Blair's presence. He informs her she will face her second trial, testing benevolence, sooner than expected, and delivers breakfast arranged by Kai, highlighting his attentiveness. After bathing and dressing with Ellie's help, Padden joins Kit to enter the throne room, where he announces her upcoming diplomatic mission to Isram to open trade and foster peace, marking the start of her second trial. Padden notices Kai's tense reaction to her public connection with Kit, fueling her emotional conflict. In Chapter 24, Kai struggles with the weight of court politics as Padden is tasked with a perilous journey to Isram to deliver rare roses, which are valuable both medicinally and diplomatically. Kit, Easel, and Callum discuss the dangers, including myths of mutated sea creatures in the shallows, yet reassure that the ship will be well protected with weapons, elites, and improved technology. Padden, initially unaware of the risks, accepts the mission for the good of the people, and Kai insists on accompanying her, declaring that he will protect her from harm despite Kit's protests. The court reluctantly agrees, setting their departure for the day after tomorrow. Later, Kai encounters Blair outside his room, who mocks and provokes him, leading to a tense confrontation where he uses telepower to restrain her briefly. The interaction reveals Kai's deep feelings for Padden, which Blair perceptively teases him about, highlighting both his loyalty and inner conflict. In Chapter 25, Padden spends her final night on solid ground in a bath, reflecting on the fear and uncertainty of venturing onto the sea, aware she cannot swim and will be vulnerable to death. Exhausted and anxious, she eventually dresses, and driven by courage and a desire to restore her connection with Kit, knocks on his door late at night. She meets Kit, surprised by his blonde hair and calm demeanor, and proposes a makeshift chocolate picnic. They sit together on a blanket, sharing chocolate and tentative conversation, discussing past misunderstandings, the purging trials, and their shared history. Pedden admits her initial motives were strategic, but grew into a genuine desire to spend time with him. Kit reveals he no longer seeks his father's approval and plans to rule Ilya on his own terms. Pedden exposes the scar on her chest, branded by Kit's father, symbolizing her enduring trauma. They acknowledge their transformations and cautiously begin to reconnect, confronting their pasts. In Chapter 26, Pedden arrives at Ilya's dilapidated dock to embark on her first sea voyage with Kai and Kit, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. Callum privately gives her 4 preserved childhood books, reminding her of her past and offering comfort. Onlookers view her as expendable, while Kai and Kit exchange light-hearted banter before boarding. The crew prepares the ship, Reckoning, under Captain Torrey's command. Sails unfurl, Tellers manage ropes, and hydros control the waves. Torrey introduces himself and explains he hasn't sailed the shallows in nearly a decade, due to legal restrictions, emphasizing the voyage's danger, but his readiness. First mate, Leon guides Pedden and Kai through the ship, showing cabins, the gun deck with swinging hammocks and cannons, cargo hold, ship's stores, galley, and toilets. Higher officers receive private quarters, while the crew shares the berth deck. Pedden notes the ship's crowded conditions and potential peril, sharing a tense, teasing exchange with Kai as the vessel sets sail toward Isram. In Chapter 27, Kai struggles with restlessness aboard the ship, drinking rum to dull his thoughts and mourn Ava. Seeking distraction, he visits Pedden, who is reading a childhood book about phoenixes and mystical creatures. They share quiet intimacy, drinking, speaking softly, and acknowledging their fleeting time together. Pedden confesses trying to reconcile with Kai's brother to ease awkwardness, while Kai suppresses jealousy to focus on the present. They bond over the story, with Kai resting in her lap as she reads, finding temporary peace. Their moments are interrupted by commotion on the deck. The crew celebrates a calm day at sea with music, dance, and rum. Kai and Pedden join, dancing and laughing in the moonlight. Kai observes those watching Pedden, protective yet reveling in their fleeting joy. Meanwhile, King Edric holds his newborn daughter, a powerless ordinary, blaming her for Iris's death. Disgusted and enraged, he orders the child's immediate disposal, instructing his advisors to erase all record of the birth, ensuring the princess is forgotten and the kingdom remains unaware. In Chapter 28, Pedden awakens to a violent storm on the ship during their second day at sea. Thunder, lightning, and crashing waves toss the vessel, causing books to fall and flooding to seep through the hallways. Pedden struggles to maintain balance while Kai intervenes, urging her to stay in the cabin for safety. Panic and claustrophobia nearly overwhelm her, but Kai steadies and reassures her, referencing her survival of past dangers in the scorches. He presents her with a thinly wrapped honey pastry from Ilya, offering comfort and a reminder of home. They share the treat while clinging to each other amidst the storm, finding a brief calm in each other's presence. The next morning, Pedden wakes safely on the cot, retrieves her damp books, and joins Kai on deck to dry them. They converse about myths and the legendary Astrum, with Kai hinting at stories she will read aloud that evening. In Chapter 29, Kai and Pedden spend days at sea during a violent storm, passing the time with stories Pedden reads aloud. Their bond deepens through shared laughter, teasing, and closeness, despite the ship's relentless rocking and his frequent seasickness. Late at night, as Pedden prepares to leave, Kai pleads with her to stay. Recalling a past nightmare in which he saw her die, and she agrees, remaining by his side. The storm continues, and as Kai wakes, he realizes Pedden's body beside him is an illusion. She has been drugged and kidnapped. He quickly arms himself and rushes to the drenched deck, spotting her bound and gagged, held by 4 men. Kai channels his powers, Illusionist, Telly, and Gust, to eliminate one attacker and confront the others. When a kidnapper throws Pedden overboard, Kai uses his Telly ability to suspend her above the waves and struggles to lift her back to safety as the storm rages. In Chapter 30, Pedden nearly drowns after being thrown overboard, but Kai lunges after her, grabbing her vest and eventually pulling her safely onto the deck despite the storm and the vest tearing. He frees her legs from the rope with his sword and checks her for injuries. Pedden recalls being drugged and restrained by crew members, realizing she narrowly escaped a planned attack. Kai expresses rage over the betrayal and vows to protect her, emphasizing her safety and his promise to save her repeatedly. They share a moment of intimacy amid the chaos. Later, Peyton confronts Captain Torrey about the attempted murder, learning that only 3 sailors acted alone and that the crew was exhausted from managing the storm. Torrey apologizes, and Kai questions the presence of an illusionist aboard who was sent by the king for protection. Kai confirms the captain's complicity and ensures Pedden keeps her dagger close for safety, reaffirming their bond as they navigate the treacherous journey to Isram. In Chapter 31, Peyton Gray and her crew arrive in Isram after surviving a stormy sea crossing. The city relies on physical strength for security, and guards initially hesitate until Kai signals peaceful intentions. They are escorted to the pearly white castle, where Pedden prepares to meet Queen Zayla, reflecting on her own role as silver savior of Ilya. Inside the throne room, Pedden observes Zayla seated on a throne made of bones, her piercing green eyes assessing them. Kai formally introduces Pedden, explaining their mission to restore trade. Zayla questions Pedden about past treason, the purging trials, and her engagement to King Kit Azur. Pedden asserts her independence, emphasizing she speaks for the powerless and not the king. Impressed by Pedden's determination, Zayla reluctantly agrees to offer temporary benevolence, granting Pedden rooms in the castle while the rest of the crew remains on the ship. The queen instructs her captain, Aiden, to escort Pedden to her rooms and manage the crew. In Chapter 32, Kai climbs a tree behind Pedden's window, risking injury to see her. She notices his effort, teasing him while recalling his past attempt to climb a willow with Ava. Kai reassures her, and they share an intimate moment, kissing passionately. Their conversation shifts to the ship they will leave on tomorrow, with Pedden expressing concern for her survival. Kai assures her it is still afloat, but uncertain how long it will last. They discuss his past, revealing A referred to Ava, and he tells Pedden she is his present A, strengthening their bond. The morning brings Kai's attempt to leave quietly, but Pedden stirs, and he covers her with a blanket. Suddenly, the Queen of Ilya appears, observing them. She comments on Pedden's killing of Kai's father, questions his feelings, and challenges him to choose between love and duty, warning that one cannot truly have both, leaving Kai contemplative as she dismisses him. In Chapter 33, Pedden awakens to find Queen Zayla in her room drinking tea. Zayla questions Pedden about her interactions with the late king, including his assassination, and probes whether Pedden intends to harm the new king, aware of Enforcer Kai's feelings for her. Pedden reassures the queen she will not and expresses willingness to marry the new king to unite the kingdom. Zayla offers cryptic advice on power and heart, leaving Pedden cautious. Later, Pedden and Kai discuss their fantasy relationship and the inevitability of her marriage to his brother, acknowledging their unspoken feelings. They reach a fragile understanding about loyalty, love, and duty. Meanwhile, King Edric reflects on deceit and power, hardened by the death of Queen Iris and indifferent to his son. Advisor Oliver Rowe presents his daughter Mila and her young son, proposing a secret marriage to secure the heir's legitimacy. Edric evaluates the child's power and accepts the plan, claiming the boy as his own. In Chapter 34, Kai begins the evening gambling with sailors, distracted by anger and longing for Pedden after their recent argument. He reflects on their tension, his guilt over the truth he learned, and the void her absence creates. Pedden approaches him, their brief reconciliation interrupted by an overwhelming pull of a foreign, intoxicating power within Kai. Suddenly, the ship lurches violently, tossing sailors and splintering the deck. A massive, unnatural sea creature attacks, its jagged teeth tearing the railing and its enormous eel-like body sweeping across the deck. Kai shields Pedden and witnesses the crew's futile attempts to fight it, including elites rendered powerless. The creature slams the ship, hurling Kai and Pedden across the deck. Kai is dragged into the sea but manages to grab a rope and climb back aboard, collapsing into Pedden's arms. They share a brief, emotional reunion as the ship continues to buckle under the monstrous attack while Pedden prepares to face her trial. In Chapter 35, Pedden faces the monstrous beast on the ship with determination, recalling its weaknesses and past encounters. She throws her spear with precision, striking the creature and forcing it to retreat into the sea. The crew, battered and bloodied, cheer her as the Silver Savior. Exhausted, Pedden reflects on the ship's ruinous state and the crew's struggle to keep it afloat using Elite's strength, tossing excess weight overboard and surviving on minimal food. As they approach Ilya, she and Kai discuss Kit, his relationship with their father, and the lingering effects of past trials, including Kit's fear of failing their father and becoming like him. Kai reveals what he and Kit witnessed during Pedon's fight with the king, clarifying the king's motives and the ordinary's diseased deception. Arriving at the dock, they face the Imperials and Kit, who acknowledges Pedon's role in defeating the beast. Their reunion is marked by recognition, respect, and the promise of her growing into her role as queen. In Chapter 36, Kai observes a candlelit banquet where Kit, appearing gaunt and exhausted, sits beside his betrothed Pedon, who displays the scar on her throat beneath her high neck dress. Kai struggles with jealousy over their closeness, while Andy and her friend Jasmine call out his staring. Kit toasts Pedon's bravery and benevolence, prompting the court to follow with "Long live the Silver Savior." Pedon notices Blair and Lenny reacting with cold fury and makes a veiled toast to the unjustly killed ordinaries. A tense exchange occurs between Kai, Pedon, and Kit, emphasizing the need for caution in ruling and restraint before Pedon becomes queen. Later, in the wine cellar, Kai, Kit, and Pedon share a private, carefree moment. They reminisce about Kai's childhood jump from the stable's roof that injured Kit, laughing together and enjoying freedom from royal duties. Their bond strengthens as they reconnect, ending with Kit toasting to old times. In Chapter 37, Pedon faces the emotional weight of preparing for her wedding while grappling with the brutality she's endured. She and Ellie select the fabric for her dress and decide on roses for the ceremony, reflecting Pedon's admiration for beauty with sharpness. Exhausted, Pedon sleeps while haunted by dreams of Adina's death. At dawn, she dresses in her old clothes, including Adina's torn vest, and returns to Lute, reliving her past struggles on the streets and confronting the harsh realities of the slums. She arrives at the fort, transformed and decorated by Adina's care, only to be struck by grief as Adina never returned. There, Pedon meets Mak, Adina's other love, who shares in the pain of her loss. They connect over mutual grief, recognizing Adina's influence in their lives. Pedon finds solace in this shared mourning and in the presence of sunlight, offering a small moment of comfort amid sorrow. In Chapter 38, Kai spends the night training alone in the ring, swinging his sword at a practice dummy until sunrise. Kit arrives, offering to spar after weeks apart, and the brothers engage in a familiar, practiced duel. Kai notices Kit appears weaker than usual, with dark circles and hollow cheeks, and questions his well-being. Kit admits he's been under the weather, but deflects further concern. During their sparring, they discuss Pedon. Kit points out Kai's love for her, prompting a brief, honest acknowledgement from Kai that he cares for her deeply, though he reminds Kit she is his bride. They reaffirm their bond as brothers, agreeing their relationship remains unchanged despite intertwined futures. Their fight resumes, a fluid, synchronized dance reflecting years of shared training. Despite small mistakes and bruises, the sparring provides both physical exertion and emotional connection, reinforcing their brotherhood and mutual respect while highlighting Kai's sleepless dedication. In Chapter 39, Pedon receives a teasing note from Kai, who mentions Kit might be trying to keep them apart. Exhausted from visiting Lute, where she met a friend who also loved Adina, Pedon writes back, sharing wedding preparations like fabric and bouquet choices while avoiding discussion of Kit. She slips the note under Kai's door, later receiving his response expressing concern and playful banter about freckles, secrecy, and the idea of running away. In the hall, she hands Kai another note, their hands briefly touching, maintaining a private bond despite duties. That evening, Pedon dines with Kit, feigning normalcy, and receives Kai's heartfelt note declaring his devotion and daring her to let him be her ruin. Meanwhile, the princes, Kit and Kai, remain inseparable under Mila's care. Believing they are half-brothers, they are unaware of the true lineage hidden by palace staff. King Edric, still devoted to Mila, plots against a forgotten daughter and the ordinary, while acknowledging Kit's studious efforts. In Chapter 40, Pedon leaves her room at night, dagger in hand, intent on vengeance after the final trial and her fort visit. She encounters Blair in the hallway, who mocks her desire to kill. Fueled by anger over Adina's death and Mac's hurt, Pedon attacks, throwing her dagger, which Blair effortlessly deflects. Blair taunts her, claiming Pedon's darkness was always inside her. Pedon follows Blair into her room, where Blair admits killing Adina haunts her but insists it was the trial. An Imperial, Lenny, interrupts, but Blair pins him with her mind. Pedon charges, but Blair restrains her, forcing her to confront her own power and resilience. Pedon asserts that her strength was found, not given, challenging Blair's superiority. Blair apologizes for Adina's death, but suddenly, fire erupts in the room. Peyton and Blair collide amidst the flames, smoke choking them. Peyton pins Blair, forcing her face toward the fire in retribution, fully embracing the numb, vengeful side of herself until darkness overtakes her. In Chapter 41, Kai pushes through Imperials toward a smoke-filled hallway where Hydros battle the remnants of a fire. Lenny, surrendering, leads him to Peyton, who sits on a stool with charred clothing, burns across her body, and a gash above her brow. She assures Kai she is okay despite the pain. Peyton explains she went into Blair's room in anger. A candle knocked over started the fire, separating her from P, and Lenny eventually recovered Blair's body. Kai reassures her, acknowledging her rage and guilt while healers tend to her burns and smoke inhalation. Kit confirms the incident will be reported as an accident to the court. Later, Peyton confronts Kai in his room, wielding a sword to release frustration over her actions and Adina's death. They share a moment of intimacy before sensing Kit's arrival. Peyton hides in the wardrobe as Kit enters, announcing the third trial will take place tomorrow in the bowl, behaving strangely and distant despite Kai's concern. In Chapter 42, Peyton wakes early, already dressed and anxious for the third trial. Lenny arrives to escort her, warning her of the dangers after nearly losing her in the previous trial. They discuss Blair and her past actions, acknowledging the ruthlessness Peyton has shown, and Lenny reassures her to stay focused. They walk through the hallway and the tree-lined path toward the bowl, reflecting on the past losses, Adina's death, and the promises that drive her forward. As they reach the arena, the roaring crowd and the memory of previous bloodshed overwhelm her, but Lenny gives her a sword and encouragement. Peyton enters the pit, taking in the size, noise, and anticipation of the audience. Kit and the Ampli-Ear appear, announcing the trial will test her bravery, benevolence, and brutality through a fight to the death. Peyton realizes her opponent will be Kai, and the shock and fear of facing him in the arena consumes her. In Chapter 43, Peyton faces Kai in the arena, forced to fight under the pretense of entertainment while struggling with the knowledge that he is the boy she loves. She cannot bring herself to strike him at first, but Kai instructs her to make the fight convincing. The battle begins with Kai using his rock-like shell power, striking relentlessly as Peyton dodges, sustaining a shoulder injury. She retaliates using her abilities, breaking his arm and surviving a choke from thorny vines, cutting them with her dagger despite receiving cuts to her neck. Kai multiplies himself with Cloner, surrounding Peyton, who fights through exhaustion and injuries, eventually identifying the real enforcer through subtle physical cues. As the fight escalates, Kai shifts into his Ignite form, unleashing destructive blasts that hurl Peyton through the sand. She struggles to maintain balance and breath while the sand collapses around her, and in the chapter's climax, she finds herself trapped in a rapidly sinking pit, facing the terrifying possibility of being buried alive. In Chapter 44, Kai urges Peyton to fight back, emphasizing that her survival depends on resisting rather than yielding. He commands her to harness her strength and abilities, signaling the urgency of the situation in the arena. The focus is entirely on Kai pushing Peyton to act, highlighting both the immediacy of the threat she faces and the necessity of her active defense. His words serve as a catalyst for Peyton to regain control, preparing her to respond to the deadly attacks and environmental hazards around her. The chapter centers on this pivotal moment of realization. Peyton must shift from panic and helplessness to deliberate action if she hopes to survive the escalating danger imposed by Kai's offensive and the collapsing sand-filled pit. This brief exchange underscores the turning point in their confrontation, emphasizing strategy, awareness, and the critical need for Peyton's active engagement in the fight. In Chapter 45, Peyton teeters on the brink of death as the pit threatens to swallow her, haunted by visions of Adina and her father. Kai's telekinesis rescues her, holding her suspended above the sand while struggling with his own emotions. Peyton encourages him, acknowledging the inevitability of her survival struggle, and together they regain footing. Kai guides her through a series of combat maneuvers, testing her endurance and skill. Exhausted, Peyton overpowers Kai, straddling him while the dagger hovers above her chest, but she redirects it into his hand, allowing him to stab himself instead, seeking to atone for past failures. Kai succumbs to the wound, his life slipping as Peyton cradles him, pleading for him to survive. The crowd remains indifferent, and Sights attempt to remove his body. Consumed by grief and rage, Peyton confronts Kit, accusing him of murdering his own brother, collapsing briefly from exhaustion and trauma as the chapter closes. In Chapter 46, Kai lies mortally wounded in the arena, a dagger buried to the hilt in his chest by Peyton, who struggles to keep him alive. He experiences intense pain but reassures her, asking her to pull the dagger out and claiming it is okay. Despite Peyton's desperate pleas and attempts to get help from the silent crowd and elites, no one responds. Kai's limited healing ability cannot save him, and he succumbs to the wound, leaving Peyton overwhelmed with grief. As his life fades, he shares a final moment with her, their hands entwined, exchanging unspoken love and farewell. Peyton is left on her knees, coated in his blood, witnessing his death and feeling the crushing weight of loss and betrayal. The chapter focuses entirely on Kai's death, Peyton's anguish, and the absence of aid from the crowd or elites, setting the stage for her next actions. In Chapter 47, Peyton wakes from a nightmarish sleep, initially believing Kai's death was a dream. She notices her hands trembling and realizes they are covered in blood, not her own, mixed with sand and grime from the trials. Panic and horror overtake her as she scrambles from bed, screaming, prompting Ellie to rush in. Peyton desperately demands to know if Kai is alive, clinging to Ellie and pleading for reassurance. Ellie hesitates, then quietly confirms the truth. Kai is dead. The weight of that reality crashes over Peyton. She recalls holding the dagger as it pierced his chest, the memory blending with her grief. Overcome by anguish, she collapses to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Ellie comforts her, holding her through the devastation. The chapter focuses on Peyton's traumatic confrontation with the reality of Kai's death, her emotional collapse, and the lingering horror of having been the one to deliver the fatal strike. In Chapter 48, Peyton awakens from her drugged haze to find herself in a tub stained with her blood from the NAL trial. Ellie gently cleans her, but Peyton feels numb, hollow, and broken, consumed by grief over Kai's death. Her body is healed from the trial's injuries, yet the mingling of her blood with Kai's remains a haunting reminder of loss. Driven by anger and the need for answers, she demands to speak with the king only to be told she is locked in the room by his orders. Overwhelmed by despair and claustrophobia, Peyton struggles against the confinement, haunted by memories of her father, Adana, and Kai. Suddenly the door bursts open, revealing Kai alive and well. He explains he had been drugged before the trial, forced to watch her fight, and survived despite her dagger. Overcome with relief and emotion, they confess their love to each other, holding tightly as they grapple with the aftermath of the trial and Peyton's lingering questions about who she actually killed. In Chapter 49, Kai and Peyton confront Kit in his study. Kit apologizes for drugging Kai and orchestrating the trial, explaining it was meant to prove Peyton's strength and test Kai's loyalty while keeping him safe. He reveals a wielder, disguised by an illusionist to appear as Kai, had been used in the arena. Peyton realizes the deception and struggles with the implications, while Kai grapples with Kit's calculated manipulation, recognizing his brother's adherence to duty over personal feeling. Kit emphasizes the kingdom only needs to fear Kai, not know the truth, and Peyton earns the kingdom's respect as queen. They proceed to the dungeons, where they find the wielder dead. Peyton identifies him as Mac, Adina's boy from Loot. She mourns him, noting his final message in stitched words, "See you in the sky." Kai, Peyton, and Kit share a moment of grief, comfort, and understanding before Peyton gives Mac a peaceful farewell. In Chapter 50, Peyton struggles with grief and survivor's guilt after Mac's death, reflecting on Adina's passing and questioning why Kai lives while Adina does not. She begins preparing for her wedding, with Ellie assisting her into a delicate white dress, noting its symbolism of purity. Peyton confronts her discomfort at wearing it, mindful of her scars and Adina's memory. Callum arrives, offering to walk her down the aisle, revealing that Adam was not her father and confirming she resembles her mother, Alice. Their conversation strengthens Peyton's resolve to honor Adina through her survival in marriage. Later, Kai visits, visibly shaken by her bridal appearance, and presents her with her father's dagger, which he had retrieved from Mac's body and reburied in a poppy field. Peyton acknowledges the unspoken bond and lingering tension between her and Kai, balancing duty, desire, and remembrance, ultimately embracing the strength she's gained through sacrifice and loss. In Chapter 51, Kai and Kit prepare to enter the throne room, aware that the court is growing restless. Kai reflects on his recent death and resurrection, noting the surreal calm he experienced. As they enter, the court reacts with shock and fear at the sight of the walking corpse, while Kit announces Kai's survival as proof of his strength as an elite. The crowd erupts in cautious celebration, acknowledging the danger Kai represents. Pettingray then enters, wearing an emerald green gown that reveals the king's carving across her chest. She strides confidently to the dais, confronting the court and a man questioning her abilities. She demonstrates her intelligence and power, exposing weaknesses in her adversary and asserting her identity as one who earned her strength through survival and cunning. Payton declares herself ordinary, yet elite, emphasizing her authority and resilience. The court kneels, and Kit takes her hand, officially presenting her as the future queen of Ilya in 3 days' time. In Chapter 52, Payton drinks wine with King Kit and his brother Kai in the cellar, sharing a rare, relaxed moment with them. The conversation turns to her elite abilities, and she explains how she deduced Commander Orson's wooden hand and the presence of his healer wife through careful observation of injuries, rings, and skin glow, impressing the brothers. Kit and Kai encourage Payton to read them, revealing small insights into their personalities. Kai cocky, Kit charming, yet complex. Amid the levity, the impending wedding looms only 3 days away, threatening Payton's freedom and her relationship with Kai. Plans for a second ceremony in the slums are discussed to unite the people, which Payton supports. Tension lingers as Kai departs to attend to duties, leaving Kit and Payton in a quiet exchange about his mother, her death, and Kit's hidden past. They agree to rest, acknowledging their shared goal of changing Ilya and the kingdom together. In Chapter 53, Kai visits his ailing mother, who is confined to her cot 2 days before the wedding. They discuss the throne room's preparation with pink roses and the royal wedding's unusual extravagance. His mother expresses concern for Kai, warns him there is much to learn, and confirms she accepts Kit marrying Payton. After attending to her cough and encouraging her to rest, Kai leaves. Meanwhile, in the castle kitchen, Kit, Kai, Payton, Andy, and Jax share a relaxed family meal. They joke, tease, and bicker like siblings, with Payton helping solve small household mysteries and joining in lighthearted conversation. The group sets the table and shares food, recalling simpler times of childhood sanctuary away from court pressures. Callum and his daughter Mira join them. During the meal, toasts are made. Glasses are raised to the plague and to saving Ilya, though Payton deliberately abstains from thanking the plague, reflecting her defiance and grief. The chapter emphasizes familial bonds, fleeting joy, and preparation for the impending royal wedding. In Chapter 54, Payton spends her final day of freedom before her wedding following a strict routine aided by Ellie and Lenny, dressing, eating, walking, and consulting Callum, while silently dreading the ceremony. Ellie helps her into a navy dress and corset, emphasizing her scar, and Payton adjusts, sharing light-hearted moments before accepting her attire. Walking through the castle with Lenny, she contemplates her future role as queen and agrees to release him from imperial duties, deferring details. Arriving at the throne room, Payton is awed by the wedding decorations, and Kit reassures her, though she feels suffocated and seeks solitude. She escapes to the gardens, running through rain toward a willow tree, where she finds Kai. They reunite in an intense, passionate encounter, expressing love and longing. Payton gives herself to him for the night, sharing intimate moments and affirming their devotion, fully surrendering to desire, connection, and the inevitability of their bond before her impending wedding. In Chapter 55, Kai wakes at dawn beneath the willow, realizing Payton is no longer beside him. He sees her sitting at the blanket's edge, illuminated by morning light, and admires her beauty and ethereal presence. Payton dresses in her damp, dirtied gown, allowing Kai to help loosely tie her corset, and they share tender, playful moments. Their intimacy turns solemn as Payton thanks Kai for the night they spent together. They kiss, savoring a fleeting moment they pretend will last forever, fully aware it cannot. Payton then rises, insisting she must leave to be prepared by Ellie for her wedding. Kai pleads, saying he cannot watch her marry another, but Payton reminds him they are bound by duty and fate, though she would choose him if she could. She steps through the willow, leaving him behind, as Kai resolves to see her after the wedding, accepting their separation for now. In Chapter 56, Payton prepares for her wedding, transforming into a queen with Ellie styling her hair and maids assisting with her intricate gown. She struggles to suppress thoughts of Kai, focusing on her duties. King Kit delivers a jewelry box from his mother, sharing a brief, silent moment with Peyton. She discovers a note from Kai expressing his enduring love and gratitude, deepening her inner conflict. Callum arrives to escort her, reminding her to take one ceremony at a time. As they approach the throne room, Peyton battles fear and disbelief, realizing she never expected to reach this day and does not love Kit. The wedding begins with a lavishly decorated throne room, the scholar officiating. Kit consents fully, and Peyton, facing her fate alone, reluctantly says, "I do." She is crowned queen consort, and the court acknowledges the union. Kai arrives too late, witnessing her marriage, acknowledging her choice with a pained smile. In Chapter 57, Kai remains beneath a willow, paralyzed by grief and longing after Peyton's wedding. He reflects on past traumas, his harsh training under his father, the death of Ava, and the first time he took a life. These experiences shaped him into a detached, powerful enforcer, masking his pain. Meeting Peyton changed him. Her presence inspires fear, awe, and desire, revealing how deeply entwined their fates are. He acknowledges that their connection is not love but duty, yet he cannot ignore the personal cost of her absence. Overcome with emotion, Kai weeps silently for the future he wished to share with her. Despite exhaustion and heartbreak, he resolves not to let her be his weakness. He recalls the memory of her presence, the warmth and touch that linger in his senses, fueling his determination. Kai leaves the willow, steeling himself to act, determined to find his queen and reclaim her. In Chapter 58, Peyton navigates the weight of her crown and the burden of her new role as queen, walking in tense silence with Kit before their second ceremony. She confronts him about their marriage, learning it was for Kai's sake and the kingdom's stability, despite his personal objections. Kit shows signs of illness, which he masks, leaving Peyton concerned. Alone, she changes into a lighter wedding dress, prepares by strapping her dagger for comfort, and explores her mother-in-law's jewelry box, discovering letters and a dried rose that reveal Queen Iris's secret lover. A photograph and notes suggest a bloodline connection, leaving Peyton stunned by her resemblance to the late queen. Callum arrives with her forgotten bouquet, prompting her realizations about his role as the king's mind reader, his long-term care of the rose garden, and his secret involvement with the resistance. She pieces together her past, confronts Callum, and acknowledges the truth about her heritage and the queen's death. In Chapter 59, Peyton confronts Callum, discovering he orchestrated much of her suffering. Callum reveals the king believed Peyton was his child, but deemed her unworthy, leaving her under a silencer after she killed Queen Iris. Her ordinary powers frustrate Callum, who admits manipulating the resistance, spying on her father, and controlling events to shape her into a puppet. Peyton recalls the king's intentions, her father's death, and the trials, realizing Callum is also a controller, making her predictable. She fights and overpowers him, stabbing him with her father's dagger, then escapes to warn Kit and sever ties with Callum. 18 years after Iris's death, King Edric sees Peyton, noting her resemblance to his late wife. She sits at his table, pretending to be elite. Edric suppresses anger, observing her while she explains her background. Learning she was raised by Adam Grey and survived as an ordinary, Edric plans to use her to draw ordinaries into the bowl during the trials, intending to exact revenge before her death, with Callum facilitating the plan. In Chapter 60, Kai navigates the crowded throne room as guests exit toward the gardens for refreshments during the second wedding ceremony in Lute. Overwhelmed by the human current, he reflects on his failure to stop the first wedding. The bride has become a queen and wife, and Kai mourns the loss of the personal connection he could have shared with her. He recognizes that while he was torn between duty and desire, he remained a powerless bystander, and now his devotion is redirected toward protecting her as her enforcer, though she belongs to his brother in life and heart. Consumed by grief and rage, Kai strikes the wall beside him, causing marble to crumble and scattering debris, unintentionally impacting nearby Brawny. He acknowledges the destructive potential beneath his calm exterior and his lethal capacity when emotionally raw. Alone and aching, Kai confronts the permanence of her absence, mourning the loss of what could have been. In Chapter 61, Peyton rushes through the palace, struggling with her dress, to reach Kit and confront him with a shocking revelation. Callum, the resistance leader, is her father, and she and Kit are half-siblings. She explains that Callum worked for Kit's father, manipulated the resistance, and that records were forged to hide her existence, with the king claiming Queen Iris died giving birth to Kit. The revelation leaves Kit stunned as he processes that Callum controlled his actions, including his recent marriage to Padden. Callum then appears, descending the palace steps, but Kit kills him with a sword to protect Padden and stop Callum's manipulation. Padden acknowledges this retribution as justice for past deaths, asserting her lingering presence as a shadow of Callum's past victims. The group discusses the political necessity of continuing the second wedding in Lute despite the siblings' discovery, agreeing that a united front is crucial for the kingdom and surrounding states, leaving Padden needing time to process her heritage. In Chapter 62, Kai witnesses the marriage of Kit Ozer and Padden Grey in the crowded streets of Elia. The coach carrying them rolls over uneven cobblestones as Kai, seated beside an impatient Jax, reflects on Padden's true identity. Daughter of the late Queen Iris, his father's mind reader, and Kit's half-sister. Despite personal resentment, Kai acknowledges the necessity of this union to protect the kingdom. The makeshift ceremony takes place on a wooden platform decorated with emerald carpet and a scholar officiating. Padden and Kit exchange vows and rings, presenting themselves stoically to the people. The crowd, consisting of hungry, downtrodden elites, witnesses their union, and when the people recognize Padden's valor as the Silver Savior, they kneel in reverence. She is crowned queen, embodying authority and strength. Kit stands stoically beside her as the scholar proclaims their roles, while Kai, now their enforcer, observes the scene, aware of his duty to protect them as the newly crowned king and queen step down from the platform. In Chapter 63, Padden spends her first evening as queen reflecting on her past and the weight of her new position. Sitting on her balcony with a cup of tea, she contemplates the revelations about her royal blood, her survival through the purging trials, and the violence endured at the hands of Edric Azer. Memories of her mother, Iris Moira's secret love, and the parallels to her own life with Kai haunt her, intensifying her uncertainty about the binding of her soul to Kit and the responsibilities it entails. Her moment of reflection is interrupted by Kai, who appears beneath her balcony. They exchange playful banter, acknowledging his role as her enforcer while subtly testing boundaries. Kai hints at a private matter, revealing their next destination, her mother's chamber. The chapter ends with Padden preparing to leave the balcony, her mind still processing her past, her duties as queen, and the intimate, protective connection with Kai that continues to grow. In Chapter 64, Kai and Kit share a quiet moment in Gale's kitchen, eating sticky buns and reminiscing about the past. The conversation highlights their bond, with Kit expressing that Kai is his strength and control, and together they can surpass the legacy of their father. Despite the tender moment, Kai is distracted by the day's brutal events, particularly Callum's death, which Kit has instructed to remain secret. Their discussion shifts to Gale's preparation of sticky buns, tied to a pregnancy craving from Queen Iris years ago, prompting a sudden realization for Kai. Padden was born 18 years ago as the daughter of Queen Iris and their father's mind reader, making her younger than him despite being a lost princess. Shocked by this revelation, and aware of the secrets surrounding Padden's birth and Queen Iris's death, Kai leaves Gale's kitchen determined to uncover the truth, with Kit following in confusion as Kai sets out to steal away his queen. In Chapter 65, Kai arrives at Kit's study with Padden on their wedding night to confront his brother about Callum's death and recent secrets. Kit appears pale, bloodshot, and unwell, revealing that the maids have been hiding his illness. Despite the tense setting, Kit initially avoids the topic, shoving his scattered parchments aside. Kai confronts him directly, reminding him that killing Callum was his first kill, but Kit insists it was necessary to eliminate a threat after Callum manipulated him. Discussion turns to Callum's letters in Iris's jewelry box, which Kit admits he intended to dispose of but was distracted. Tension escalates as Kit accuses Padden of destabilizing their family and declares that Kai has repeatedly chosen her over him. Kai realizes Kit's jealousy is not for Padden herself, but for the bond she shares with him, understanding that Padden is now more your family than I am. The chapter ends with Kai stepping away, leaving Kit confronted with his envy and isolation. In Chapter 66, Padden follows Kai to Queen Iris's neglected chamber, noting the dust and toppled books. Kai suspects the king's true records may be hidden there, and together they discover a locked desk containing 3 decrees: birth, death, and marriage. The documents reveal that 18 years ago, Queen Iris died in childbirth, and Pedin, an ordinary, was hidden by the king, who later married Mila Rowe to conceal the truth. Kai realizes he was never the king's blood, but a powerful child chosen as a replacement elite. Confronting his mother, Mila, Kai learns Edric manipulated events to secure a strong heir, and she apologizes for her enforced silence. Pedin clarifies she is the Mind Reader's daughter, not the king's ordinary. The chapter also details King Edric's hatred toward Pedin, his attempts to punish her and assert control, and his final acts of violence and marking, while dying ignorant of the true love and sacrifices surrounding him. In Chapter 67, Pedin confronts the full scale of Kit's obsession and madness. Kit reveals that Edric Azir was not Kai's father, and that Pedin, not Kai, is the true blood heir, making her pivotal to his plan. He admits his lifelong desire to surpass his father, using a century-old man-made plague, originally designed to strengthen Ilya's troops, which instead killed many and left elites vulnerable. Kit intends to exploit Pedin as queen, to open borders and distribute plague-laced resources, consolidating elites' power. He manipulated Callum, orchestrated Pedin's marriage, and used the trials as a death sentence to remove threats. Kai pleads against the human cost, but Kit dismisses it as necessary. During the confrontation, Kit lunges at Pedin, prompting Kai to defend her with the iron stoker. In a tragic accident, Kit is fatally impaled by the stoker, bleeding out as Kai cradles him. Pedin witnesses his death, realizing the depth of his manipulations and the chaos he caused. In Chapter 68, Kai cradles his gravely wounded brother Kit, who is bleeding from injuries inflicted by the ashy stoker. Kit, delirious and fearful, expresses guilt over losing control and harming those he cares about, including his queen, Pedin. Kai tries to reach the healers across the castle but is blocked, leaving him powerless. He reassures Kit he is not a monster and has always been at his side. Kit, losing strength, entrusts Kai with his wedding ring, requests to be buried under the willow tree, and urges them to love each other before succumbing to his injuries. Kai is left devastated and numb until Pedin returns with a healer. Earlier, Edric Azir warns Kit of Pedin and reveals himself as the resistance leader, explaining the use of hidden fatals. Edric instructs Kit to subtly guide Pedin through castle tunnels to aid the resistance's plans. He emphasizes eliminating ordinaries and continuing his legacy. Kit internalizes his father's expectations, resolves to surpass him, and determines to become the greatness Edric never achieved, while Kai and Pedin remain unaware of the full scope of Edric's intentions. In Chapter 69, Pedin and Kai read more of Kit's letters, exposing his paranoia, obsession with Kai, and descent into instability. Kit reveals he found Queen Iris's jewelry box containing Callum's notes, leading him to question his legitimacy and view Callum as a threat, ultimately killing him. Kit admits he plotted Pedin's death, used her trials to manipulate the people, and sent her to Isram with plague-laced roses to spread the virus. He feared losing Kai to her and orchestrated events, including Makoto Keaton's fight against Pedin in the bowl, which failed when Makoto died. The plague worsened Kit's health and mind, increasing his obsession with surpassing Edric and securing his legacy. His writings show his fixation on power, paranoia about being a bastard, and his determination to remove Pedin, whom he saw as a threat after she gained the slum's loyalty, cementing his transformation into a ruthless and unstable ruler. In Chapter 70, 6 days after Kit's death, Kai and Pedin remain by his side until dawn, grief-stricken and covered in his blood. Pedin helps Kai bathe and comforts him as they mourn together. The kingdom is shrouded in mourning, with black-draped halls, gossiping citizens, and scholars pressing Kai to accept the crown, which he postpones until Kit's burial. A letter from Queen Zayla reveals she sensed and neutralized the plague-laced roses sent to Isram, issuing a warning while expressing interest in future relations. Over the following days, Kai finds solace and support from Gale, Jax, and Andy, while healers confirm Kit's mind and body deteriorated due to his choice to take another plague dose, explaining his erratic behavior. The group spends time in Kit's study, reminiscing over memories as Kai gradually softens under Pedin's care. On the 5th day, Pedin removes her wedding ring, and by the 6th day, they begin reading Kit's letters, uncovering his thoughts and plans. In Chapter 71, Kai digs Kit's grave beneath Ava's willow tree, overwhelmed with grief and guilt, reflecting on their bond, Kit's obsession with greatness, and the destruction caused by Edric's ambitions. Pedin joins him, comforting him through his anguish, assuring him Kit's actions were influenced by the plague and that his death wasn't Kai's fault. Kai breaks down, mourning his failure to save his brother, while Pedin reassures him their promises to lost loved ones are not broken but waiting for them. Her strength and compassion steady him as she urges him to let Kit rest. Together, they begin digging the grave, turning the sorrowful act into a tribute to Kit's playful spirit, finding brief solace in each other's presence. This chapter highlights Kai's grief, Pedin's unwavering support, and their shared resolve to honor Kit's memory while carrying forward in the aftermath of his death. In Chapter 72, 2 days after Kit's burial, Pedin tries to distract Kai from his grief by spending time together, including archery practice at the site of the purging trials. They share quiet walks, moments in the kitchen with Gale, and nights spent together in a makeshift bed under moonlight, helping Kai slowly regain some peace. During their archery match, Pedin admits she feels guilt and sorrow over Kit's hatred, but Kai reassures her that Kit's actions were caused by sickness and obsession, not her. They reflect on Kit's struggles, his need for validation, and their own roles in his life. Pedin emphasizes that Kai was Kit's anchor, not his rival, while Kai credits Kit as the good brother. They reaffirm their bond, with Kai declaring Pedin his flame and himself her shadow. Though grief lingers, their connection deepens as they honor Kit's memory, offering comfort and strength to each other. In Chapter 73, Kai is crowned King of Ilya, wearing a silver crown while Kit's golden crown remains with him beneath the willow tree. Determined to honor Kit's memory, Kai declares that Ilya's borders will remain open and ordinaries will be welcomed, promising to rebuild the kingdom as Kit wished and ensure he is remembered as a great king. After the ceremony, Kai finds Pedin presenting her with forget-me-nots and proposes using Kit's ring, fulfilling his brother's dying wish for them to love each other. Pedin tearfully accepts, and they share a heartfelt moment acknowledging their love and the bittersweetness of Kit's absence. Pedin wears both Kit's gold band and her father's steel ring, declaring their love eternal and vowing to defy death itself to protect Kai. Surrounded by forget-me-nots, they embrace their future together, united in love and grief, determined to honor Kit's memory and build their shared destiny. In Chapter 74, Pedin reflects on a dream of Adina that brings her peace before her wedding. Ellie helps her prepare, braiding her hair and repairing Adina's vest to wear over her simple gown. Unlike her arranged marriage to Kit, Pedin feels joy and freedom as she prepares to marry Kai. Kai briefly breaks tradition to bring her porridge, showing vulnerability and seeking reassurance that she will say yes. Pedin affirms her love, and they share an emotional moment before parting. Lenny escorts her to the ceremony, joking about always calling her princess without knowing her true lineage, which she continues to keep secret to avoid questioning Kai's legitimacy. The scene highlights Pedin's acceptance of her ordinary identity and her deep love for Kai, contrasting past fear with present happiness. As they walk through the blooming garden, Pedin boldly declares this wedding is exactly what she wants, fully embracing her future. In Chapter 75, Kai and Pedin marry beneath the willow tree where Kit and Ava are buried, surrounded by close friends and memories of those lost. The intimate ceremony takes place during a storm, with Pedin carrying a bouquet of poppies, roses, and forget-me-nots. There are no grand vows or formalities, only heartfelt promises as they exchange I do's, sealing their commitment with a kiss. They leave the Willow's shelter as king and queen celebrated by their loved ones. Kai crowns Pedin with a handmade flower crown, and they dance together in the rain, joyful and unburdened despite their grief. Pedin gives Kai a stem of forget-me-nots, tucking it behind his ear, symbolizing their devotion and shared journey. The chapter emphasizes love, healing, and unity, as Kai and Pedin embrace their future together while honoring the memories of those they've lost, solidifying their bond as partners, rulers, and soulmates. In Chapter 76, 5 years later, Pedin and Kai live a peaceful life with their young daughter Kit as they travel through Tondo to manage trade agreements. Their marriage is strong and Ilya thrives under their rule, with open borders, growing unity between elites and ordinaries, and revitalized slums. Kit's playful innocence reflects their happiness, while Kai and Pedin share tender moments that reveal their deep love and healing from past trauma. During their visit, Pedin spots Blair, the woman who once killed Adina. Instead of seeking revenge, Pedin silently chooses peace, signaling forgiveness and a desire to let Adina rest. Blair acknowledges this and disappears. The family continues down the sunlit streets, surrounded by memories of those they've lost, carrying their legacies forward. The chapter emphasizes healing, growth, and hope, showing Kai, Paiden, and Kit as a united family who have turned pain into love, creating a life that feels safe, warm, and complete. Epilogue. Kit awakens in the afterlife, expecting dramatic finality but finding only endless darkness and silence. He wanders the void, reflecting on his life, mistakes, and regrets, particularly how power and the plague consumed him. Mara, death personified, briefly appears, telling him this emptiness is his peace because he accepted his fate long before dying. She leaves him with the promise to let him go gently. Alone again, Kit considers his past, no longer feeling anger toward Kai or Paiden, but burdened by loneliness. Eventually, two glowing lights appear, resembling stars, and speak to him kindly. They assure him he is not a monster, only the product of his father's sins, and share that life separated them, but death reunited them. They offer to stay with him until he sees his brother again, bringing him unexpected comfort as he waits in the void, no longer entirely alone.